Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with a mix of Neighbors from Hell and Ask Reddit stories. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled HOA Christmas Miracle. My husband and I have a nice house in a nice neighborhood with an HOA board that has nothing better to do than harass people with different cultures and religions, or those of us that leave our trash cans out for an hour later than they want. I honestly tried to fight my husband on purchasing a house in this neighborhood. He is a very eccentric man who likes to throw lots of parties and boldly and proudly celebrate his Hindu culture. He always wants to be friends with everyone and is not shy about decorating our house for any occasion. I think it annoys the HOA. Nearly every holiday, even the simpler ones, we get some kind of threatening letter or email saying that something my husband has outside or in the window is against policy or unsightly or distracting. One time he put up a Hindu flag in the kitchen window, which you cannot see from the road, only if you are lurking around the side of the house, and they told him he had to take it down. They claimed that it did not maintain a harmonious relationship with the houses around it. That was total BS if you ask me. Anyway, as I mentioned, he loves to decorate the home for any holiday, whether it is American or Hindu, he is going to go all out. Our kids love it, and lots of the neighbors tell us that they also enjoy his over-the-top decorations. My husband RJ started leaving a string of yellow lights on the back porch. They were just simple lights, but they were in celebration of a Hindu holiday that his mother, who recently passed, really loves. He also wanted to leave them in an homage to her, whom he dearly missed. He also kept a string of lights in the kitchen window, which, like I said, should not bother anyone since it is off to the side of the house. We very quickly started receiving the letters asking us to remove the lights from the porch and the window, for it wasn't any of the approved holiday times that lights can be left up. According to them, they were a nuisance to the neighbors who I know for a fact had not been complaining. Months of this go by as RJ wanted to mourn his mother. Eventually, my husband abided and turned the lights off, but became frustrated one night when he felt like they were telling him he could not honor his mother. He turned on them and said, "Screw them." An HOA meeting was coming up and he decided he would go and speak his piece with them in person, since writing them letters got him nowhere. When we went to this HOA meeting, there were few people there besides the members, whom were all super judgy looking, and I already hated them. They immediately were glaring. One woman kept looking at my husband and I, her eyes shifting back and forth between us. I had already mentioned that I felt like they were discriminating against us for our different culture and religion, even though he was Indian and I was white. It just always felt like they targeted us more than others. That day confirmed my suspicions for sure. I could feel the racism and hate in her stare. I did not like the air in the room right away. My husband, being his confident and positive thinking self, did not seem as bothered by it. It would not be long before he started to realize that people were up against him in this room. It took an annoying amount of time for them to even speak to us. There was not really anything going on, but one person asking for them to drop some fine regarding her husband's truck. After they denied her, she quickly left with her head hanging. My husband stood up and the one witch-looking lady told him she would call on him when she was ready and that he could sit down for now. I immediately bristled at this. How dare she? They are not doing anything. She is supposedly writing something down and looking through papers, but is probably just doodling on a napkin. Once Her Highness was ready for us, she gestured rudely to my husband to stand up and speak. He stated which house we were, and she rolled her eyes and bluntly said, "I know who you are, sir. The house with the lights that are on 24/7. All the board members nodded their heads and murmured how they were also tired of the string lights we had hanging up, something about how they were against the holiday guidelines for lights and decorations. RJ was cut off several times as he attempted to explain that while they were not in accordance with the American holidays, they were meant to celebrate Hindu ones. They continued to mention that even though they were for another cultural purpose, it is still their neighborhood policy to have holiday lights up only for 4th of July, Halloween, Thanksgiving and Christmas. No exceptions. Perhaps RJ should have known that talking any further would not get him anywhere, but he could not help it. He is a smart man, but honestly too optimistic. That's why he has me, the pessimist, to remind him of how bad people really are. Poor RJ tried to say that he wished that he could keep the lights on the back porch up at least to honor his mother who recently passed away. They denied him quickly, no sympathy or understanding in their voices. Only judgment and an authoritarian attitude. It was disgusting. They dismissed us, stating that we had to pay an even larger fine for being late on the last two. That would wrap up to be about $1,000, which is truly ridiculous. RJ and I started to leave, but I stopped and told him to head to the car and I would catch up. I stopped next to a table that had a large pitcher of water and lemons and some glasses. Which was cute. I mean that sarcastically too. I mean, like anyone would want to casually drink some lemon water while dealing with these a-holes. You know, there's probably a law against the level of discrimination you are showing my husband. The HOA queen in the middle laughs and says that she would love to see us take her to court. I calmly mentioned to her that I would be calling the local news and outing them for the racist people they are. To which she responded with more laughter and taunting. Being a somewhat scrappy chick who does not take much crap from everyone, instead of hitting her in the face with a chair, I simply poured the whole pitcher of lemon water on the hardwood, slowly, while I stared at all of them and then gracefully left. My husband was defeated for days after this. Somehow they had managed to hurt my sweet and loving RJ, which filled me with a rage. He had turned off the lights and moved the potted plants his mother loved and the picture he kept of her inside to a sad corner in the kitchen. While he was pouting on the couch, I moved everything back to the porch and garden area, where I set it all back up and turned the lights on. I don't care anymore. This little shrine of lights and plants meant a lot to him, and they would not take it away from him. A few days later we received more letters, one saying that the bill had tripled due to water damage to the floor during the HOA meeting. The second letter stated that they were taking us to court for the fines that we had not paid them for the lights being up for the last 6 months. It may have amounted to about $8,000 in fines. Wow, the gal. I think the queen bee is doing this because of my threat to call the news about them. We kept up our lights and the fines kept racking up as we waited for our court date. It was near Christmas and my husband had put up some inflatable decorations. There was a snowman and a Santa and a Hindu elephant. Our son and RJ last year had made a Christmas decorated Hindu elephant out of wood and other items. One day we came home and it had been smashed and all the other decorations had holes poked in them and were deflated. My family was so upset, my son cried for an hour about the elephant. It was terribly sad and infuriating. I took pictures of it to show in court to support our case about discrimination. The court date finally came and it was a surprisingly speedy meeting. It was rather casual and the judge did not seem like he was in favor of the HOA from the very beginning. He heard both sides of the story and after listening intently, he was very quick to say that the HOA was being cruel and ridiculous. The picture I took of the Christmas decoration massacre was just a nail in the coffin for the queen bee, as she was ghost white with rage and fear when I showed them. The judge's glance in her direction was a scary one, as he did not find it funny or acceptable to vandalize our property. He agreed with our case of discrimination and racism and awarded us a large sum of $39,000 that I was honestly not expecting. Our lawyer said that it was well deserved and the HOA was not happy. The judge stated that their rules and expectations about the lights and decorations were broad and ridiculous and that they could not use their power to harass people of other races and religions. RJ and I practically skipped out of the court and were funny enough parked very close to the HOA queen, who I was not shy about grinning at as we both flipped her the bird. They must have learned their lesson because we have not heard a peep from them since about our home or decorations. Oh, and the policy regarding holiday lights was removed from the HOA rules and regulations. Mother-in-laws of Reddit, in the interest of fairness, what are your crazy daughter-in-law stories? Not the mother-in-law, but the sister-in-law, and my mom cannot stand her either. She was lovely at first, seemed really nice, but then she started staying over more often until she was practically living with us, and that is when the problems began. I was a teenager at the time and used to be allowed to bring friends back, and my mom would provide us with a little alcohol because in her eyes it meant she could supervise us and it was stopping us getting way too drunk out in the streets somewhere. The only rules for this were don't drink too much and keep the noise down, which we did. However, sister-in-law could hear a pin drop and would send my brother down to tell us all to shut up, even though neither him nor my mom could hear a thing from us. It got to the point where we would try to find somewhere else to go if we knew she was there, which made my mom worried sick I was gonna end up dead in a ditch somewhere. So one night she is in the kitchen grabbing food while we are playing games in the living room, not making a peep because we are too focused on the game, when once again my brother appears to tell us to shut up, not knowing my mom is there. She blew up, shouted at my brother in front of all of us about how we were not making a sound, the volume was even pretty low on the TV, and then she stomped upstairs and went off at sister-in-law for it. She left shortly after and didn't come back for a while, but eventually she apologized and started coming over again, and once again the stuff began to repeat itself. Fast forward a bit, my brother is planning on proposing to her. He has it all planned out how he's gonna do it in her favorite restaurant, and it all sounded very romantic. Cut to the day, he is all excited, he knows she's gonna say yes because they had been discussing it for a while, and he decides that today at the restaurant he's gonna try to joke with her about how he doesn't want to get married. His joke about it does not go over well though, and she blows up at him in the restaurant and leaves. He's now in a panic and trying to chase after her, but he has lost sight of her, so he jumps in a taxi to her mom's flat, only to see she is in the one in front of him. He catches up to her on the stairs out of breath and crying and proposes to her there and then, trying to explain he thought she would get that he was joking. He said it in such a sarcastic voice, there's no way she could have thought it was real. So now they are engaged and saving for a wedding, or they are supposed to be, but she decides she really wants to go to New York City. We live in the UK for a holiday, so the wedding gets postponed twice because she decides one trip was not enough. Brother is now beginning to fall into debt as she keeps jumping between jobs and cannot afford to pay for anything herself, so he asks us not to get him anything for birthdays and Christmas, as he could no longer get anything for us and would feel guilty, but we couldn't have him go without though. The expensive wedding she wanted is not helping either, and she has become a right bridezilla, unwilling to listen to compromise or anything. So nothing extraordinary happens on the wedding day, and off they go once again to New York City for their honeymoon. Once they get back, however, she plans several more New York City trips for them and a few trips around the UK too, just to get tattoos because God forbid she go to an artist that isn't Instagram famous, and she just needs to go to these expensive makeup shops in London too. Of course, this is all funded by my brother and his credit cards. We barely hear from them or see my brother anymore because she doesn't like that my mom shouted at her all those years before. She makes absolutely no attempt to communicate with us whatsoever, but fully expects my brother to take her mom out for lunches and dinners, which really upsets my mom. This carries on until just before the pandemic, when my brother's cards were fully maxed out. He is in debt that's gonna take years to get out of and can no longer pay for her expensive lifestyle. So they split up. We don't know at first as they continue to live together, but we can tell something is up since we begin to actually see my brother and hear from him more often again, and not just when he is looking to borrow money. I was first to find out as his best friend works at the pub I always go to, and he has the biggest smile on his face, which is rare. He never liked her from day one and would constantly tell my brother to get rid of her, so when he found out, he was over the moon. He asked if I had heard yet and then almost danced on the spot saying it was over with them, and I must admit I was the same too. Immediately phoned my mom and she was so happy to hear the news too. He is doing alright now. Unfortunately, because of the debt and the virus, he still lives with her, but he's getting his finances back in order though, with no help from Her Majesty, who until travel bans was flying abroad to see her new boyfriend, and hopefully soon he will be able to move out and finally be rid of this gold-digging woman for good. And the next one goes like this. Daughter-in-law here. My husband and his mom have had a strained relationship due to politics the last few years, but a little over a year ago I got a DUI. It was a supreme screw up on my part and I take full responsibility. I made stupid choices, hence the throwaway. Anyway, my husband gets the call that I am getting arrested and he chose in the moment to call his mom to help, versus my mom. My mom is super chill and a good woman in a crisis and was arguably the more pragmatic choice, but I think he just needed his mom, understandably. So he calls his mom to come watch our kid while he figures out bail and picking me up and all that. I will never forget coming home at like 4 AM feeling so embarrassed and overwhelmed, and she was there, arms wide open, to accept and comfort me. This diminutive church-going southern mama grabbed me and held my atheist F up ass for what seemed like an eternity, but in a good way, like all her natural mom energy was passing through me. We may not agree on most things, but I will never forget how loved she made me feel at my lowest without judgment or pretense. I hear horror stories about in-laws and I think how lucky I am. And the next one, throwaway. We lived on the other side of the country from them, so we didn't have many visits, 1 or 2 a year. When we visited, all was well, the house was clean, the kids were cared for, etc. She was fun to be around. However, once we left, life went back to normal for my son and grandkids. She would say she was going to the store and would not come home for 2 to 4 days. She did drugs, she did not clean anything. My son traveled for business and when he was gone she had many different men in the house. He would come home to a trashed house, trashed car, trashed everything. She would put the kids to bed and then leave to party. She kept the 2 oldest kids home from school when he traveled. She was too busy sleeping from partying all night to take them to school. As he was making plans to leave her and take the kids, she killed the youngest child and is now in jail awaiting trial. All of this came out after she died. I wish they had never met. And the next one happened to a friend. Her brother married this girl who was his college friend, very happy, have a baby girl, and suddenly her father passed away, so her mother went to stay with son and daughter-in-law. At first she was okay. But after like a month, daughter-in-law started to lock the fridge. In India, fridges come with internal locks and pantry doors. She started cutting down mother-in-law's food. When my friend came to know about this, we went to her brother's place, packed her mom's stuff and brought her back to my friend's house. Scary lady, that daughter-in-law. My brother didn't say anything to his wife. Edit, people are asking what did mother-in-law do that daughter-in-law had to cut down food supply. There is nothing she could do to get this kind of treatment from her son and daughter-in-law. That old lady is literally the sweetest lady I have ever met. Took care of her granddaughter and cleaned the house. We have locks on our fridges which come with 2 keys. We lose that like on the first day. It is to keep kids and monkeys out. And yes, we have rogue monkeys who raid our kitchens. And the first one goes like this. Do sister-in-law stories count? I started a really successful event photography business with my oldest brother. I literally managed and administrated everything, all the marketing, accounting, client communication, bookings, web management, everything. Not because I wanted to, but because my brother just wanted to be the main photographer and do nothing else, so I let him. On top of everything, I also went to every single event as a secondary photographer and did the legwork of climbing into wet bushes up to my knees to hold lights and running around to take photos of guests. However, my brother was the one that invested into the equipment, so I never complained. We split everything 50-50, which he wasn't happy about, but we agreed to leave it as it was. This business was my literal job. We had been doing it for 2 years and all of my bills relied on it. I dropped out of university to do it. His wife and I would go work out 3 times a week and had known each other for 10 years. I had opened up to her about my deep mental health struggles, and her and my brother were the first people to make me feel safe and understood. I had never opened up like that to anyone else before, and the two of them got to see me at my most vulnerable. One evening, she broke down crying over the fact that my brother spent so much time on the business that she no longer felt secure. She said that she was at her happiest when he had a salary job and they were thinking about their future and about having kids, and that now their future was so uncertain because he was irritable and focused on work. He was having mood swings and acting up and getting angry for no reason. My god, of course, I immediately understood. I told her to forget about the workout and to go home and have a talk with him after I bought us dinner. I told her to be honest about these feelings and to really have a true heart-to-heart without pride and without hiding anything. I told her that my brother loves her more than anything and that if they decide together for him to leave the business, that I am completely okay with it. Not to think about me, but to instead see it as only a matter that involves the two of them and no one else. I also mentioned that if they do end up fighting and she needs to clear her head before trying again, that she was welcome to come stay with me for a day or two if she needed it, since I knew how my brother could get angry and overwhelming, not abusive but overwhelming, and since he has some unresolved anxiety issues. We both went to our respective homes, and later that night she texted me that they talked, that all is good and not to worry. I told her that I was glad and asked what they had decided regarding the business. She was avoiding the subject and kept saying things like, "I'm lucky to have in-laws that worry about me, hope your day's good too." I let it go and just cheered her on and waited to hear from either one of them about work. After 3 days I asked her again. My stupid hipster brother didn't have a phone because the government, and I could only contact him through his wife. She deflected again, so I told her, "Hey, I really do have to know what is happening with work. I have clients waiting to hear back from me." At that point, seemingly out of nowhere, she simply texted back, "I don't know what is going on with them, but you clearly have unresolved issues and I just cannot deal with it. Sorry." I was like, what? After a back and forth that told me absolutely nothing but was deeply hurtful, she merely told me to ask my other brother to pick up my leftover stuff from their house. An hour later, my oldest brother, sister-in-law, husband emailed me asking for all of the leftover client information that I had in my notebook and didn't get the chance to add to our software. I seriously couldn't understand what was happening. When my middle brother went to pick up my stuff, sister-in-law was throwing it down, telling him, and get this, telling him that I told her to break up with my brother to come live with me. That I was salty at my oldest brother for yelling at me when we did business and tried to manipulate sister-in-law into leaving him. I could not tell if she was trying to imply that I was in love with her or something by saying that I had asked her to come live with me. They were the only people I had opened up to about being bisexual, and since she had already used my mental illness against me, I wouldn't be surprised if she was using that too. She told this story to effing everyone, including my mom. They locked me out of the website and of all the software we shared with all the client information. My brother had all the equipment, I had absolutely no qualifications and was scared to reinvest my savings into my own equipment when I wasn't even sure how long I would go without clients to pay my rent. I had a mental breakdown over it alone in my apartment and turned myself into the psych ward because I had thoughts about ending my own life. I only told my mom about this because she had to drive me. My oldest brother came to visit me in the ward. I thought he had come to see what had happened and to get my side of the story. He did ask but didn't seem to care when I explained it. He just came to talk to me about the administrative tasks of the business and ask for tips. I decided to just let everything go and I gave him the stupid info he came for. Lo and behold, he is still doing the business, but now he is doing it with his wife. There are so many conclusions I could draw from this, but I don't even want to try. He has managed to lose every single one of the high-end clients I had booked and has ruined the business relationship I was fostering with the local luxury hotel event venue manager for long-term client flow. but they have made the business work well enough to pay their rent since then. It has been about 3 years and I have not spoken to them since. It took my mom a long time to come to terms with that, but she did eventually. Running that business was the happiest I had ever been. It was entirely my idea to start it and I was doing a damn good job at growing it. But I blew all my savings trying to go to university and dropping out because of my mental health, and I was just never able to save up enough to buy everything that I would need to get started on my own. My life has been downhill ever since and I am still trying to figure out what I am doing. Thanks, sister-in-law. The next story is from the same subreddit and is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law that she cannot control how I act in my home? My mother-in-law moved in with us about 3 months ago. It has been okay, she and I are clashing personalities and cultures, and it has come up more often now that we share a similar space. She is a traditional Hispanic woman with a strong sense of decorum and family hierarchy. I am white, liberal in all ways, and agnostic about most traditions, including and especially the need to obey elders. Before, out of consideration to my spouse and out of a belief in the 'my house, my rules' adage, I used to watch what I said around her very carefully because we only visited her about once a month. But when my spouse asked if she could live with us, I said I was okay with it as long as I no longer had to walk on eggshells around her. My spouse agreed and told their mother that she needs to respect that we do and say things differently in our home than she may like. I don't know how her mother responded to that, but it never came up again. Last week, my 10-year-old and I were chatting while having breakfast while she was in the kitchen. We were goofing around and making bodily function sounds to each other. We are very mature, I know, but when I said, 'I fart in your general direction,' and made a loud raspberry sound at her, she was giggling like crazy. My mother-in-law slammed down her coffee mug and said in Spanish, 'Don't you dare teach my granddaughter to be so disrespectful. I will not allow this kind of vulgarity in my home any longer.' And I said, in English, I can understand Spanish but cannot speak it well, 'This is my home. You don't get a say in how I interact with my kids or how any of us speak or act.' She stormed away and now is not speaking to me. My spouse says I am the a-hole because I embarrassed her in front of our daughter and because I expected her to accept too much too quickly. They also say that I am being a little culturally insensitive and that I need to respect that Abuela will be deeply offended by how I spoke to her, so I need to apologize. And I also apologize for butchering that word. Anyway, but I think it was important for her to see that I would stand up for our interactions and myself, and also to stick to what we originally agreed on, that I won't be policed in my own home. So guys, in this case, is OP the a-hole or not? I would argue that he's definitely not the a-hole because, as he said, his house, his own rules. Anyway, let us know your opinion in the comments. And by the way, please also let me know if you enjoy r/am I the a-hole, because I think it's a great subreddit, especially to encourage discussion. And the last story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for being mad? My mother-in-law stored a pie in my oven." This was from last Thanksgiving, but I was recently reminded of it and I'm still wondering where other people stand on this. After Thanksgiving, we had a lot of leftovers, so we crammed everything into the fridge. Unbeknownst to me or my partner, my mother-in-law decided to put 2 leftover pies in our oven for storage, one of which had a plastic tray. They then left town the next day. A few days later, I went to make some food and preheated the oven, which upon smelling a strange smell discovered the burning pies and now dripping molten plastic all over my oven. I got quite mad at my mother-in-law for a few reasons, which started an argument with my husband as he is defending all these actions. Number 1, I've never heard of using an oven for storing food over multiple days and I found it bizarre. Second, I said that even if that's normal, she should not put something that can melt like plastic in an oven ever. To which my husband responded, "It is my responsibility to check." Number 3, she should have told me or him that she had put it there, because if she was leaving, how would we know to look before it went bad? For whatever reason, this turned into a huge argument as I spent the next days scraping and burning off the melted plastic, and my husband continued to argue that keeping food in an oven is completely normal behavior and that I should have checked first. So, am I the a-hole for having these expectations/beliefs? and for thinking my kitchen will be the way I left it. Is it all my fault for not checking first, or did she drop the ball? Honestly, I would not have cared if it just burned food. It was the plastic that made it into a bigger deal. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.